Hey Sainers, welcome back to the Saints TV YouTube channel. Welcome to the round 11 preview video. It's in Kilda up against North Melbourne at Marvel Stadium. 1:15 p.m. slot on the Sunday. Good old Sunday football. And it's a fairly important game. You wouldn't have thought that. It's 5th up against 17th. But this sets us up big time for the second half of the year. We've got North, and then we've got the bye, and then we've got Brisbane, and that's when that stretch of tough games hits us. So this game is really critical for us for two reasons. Gets us to 8-3, and that's really important, and that's another step closer to locking in that top 8 spot and potential top 4 spot and percentage. And now that's no disrespect to North Melbourne, but the rest of the teams inside the top 8 have all played North, I believe, and they've all beaten North pretty comfortably, and the latest team to do that was Melbourne last week by the tune of, I think, 47 points. But North Melbourne were very competitive in that game. We can't discount that. They were very good for 3 quarters, and it was just Melbourne and their class late in the game that took hold of the young North players and got the job done. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for this weekend. I'm hoping that off the back of the confidence of the last 2 weeks, it's interesting because against Geelong, we probably played 1.5 good quarters and we won the game. And against Adelaide, we basically played that really good quarter in the final term. We kicked 8 goals to 3, and that really sealed the win. So we haven't really strung a full quarter performance together since the Hawthorn win. And even then, we started that game a little bit slow. But that's probably our closest complete game this season so far. So that's what I'm looking forward to in this game. The downside is that Hunter Clark won't be playing. He was being talked up to return from his long injury spell, but COVID has hit him, and that means he'll be sitting out until at least the Brisbane game in a fortnight's time. And that's the same with Jack Higgins. He was recovering from concussion protocols, and he would have been in the clear to return this weekend. But again, COVID protocol has hit him, and he'll be out until at least the Brisbane game as well, which is fine because the depth at Sandy is huge at the moment. You know, we've got the likes of Highmore, Lynett, we've got Bytel, Owens, these sort of guys that have been performing very well for the space of the last 4 or 5 weeks at Sandy. And pretty unlucky to not get any games at senior level until potentially this week. And that's kind of the main talking point is who comes out, who comes in, because of the depth. The competition for spots is huge in this club. And, you know, we're missing Hunter Clark and Higo for this week, and Jack Steele for long term. But we're not really that worried about it because we've got players that can pick up that workload, and we showed that last week against Adelaide. And even against Geelong, Steely was in the forward line for the majority of that game, and we held strong against a very seasoned midfield outfit. And this week we're playing an inexperienced team who have had a week from hell, to be honest. You know, they played really well against Melbourne. That was a good starting point for them. But ever since then, Horne-Francis went home without telling anyone at the club. That's created its own story. He's put off contract talks until the end of the year. Another story for the number 1 draft pick. And then you've got the players disconnect with the coach, whether they're really playing for him, and if he's going to be there until the end of the season, and all that sort of talk around his contract. So it's one of those games that can turn into a serious danger game for like a club like us. We always seem to get clubs when their back's against the wall, the media's smashing them, and then they always come out and win a game against us, against all odds. So this is a game we need to be quite careful of, just because North have got some good youngsters, but it's just one of those games where a team will just pull a win out of nowhere just to show the competition that things are going not as bad as people think. So this is a game we need to start fast. We haven't done that for months. We haven't started a game like a house on fire I can't remember the last time we did that. So this is a game where it's going to be majority Saints fans. You would have thought last week North were criticised because they only got 13,000 at Marvel against Melbourne, against the ladder leaders who are undefeated. This week, you're probably going to get 20 maybe. I think a lot of Saints fans will want to turn out because we've been away from home for a week now. So they'll be keen to get to some Sunday footy and see a pretty comfortable win. You'd hope, but it's just one of those games where it could be a 100-point win or it could be a 10-point win. You're like, bloody hell, lucky we got out of that one and we got through with the 4 points. So for us, I think it's all about maturity. This game is about taking North Melbourne seriously. And that's, to be honest, something that I think we haven't done very well of in seasons gone by, is play teams that are near the bottom of the ladder struggling and give them the full respect for the 4 quarters. And I think Marshy put it really well in the podcast. He wanted us to respectfully disrespect North Melbourne. And I love that saying. That's spot on, because we need to respect them, but not so much that we give them space and time. We need to respect them in the way we would respect Melbourne. And that means we respect how good they are and how good they can be with time and space, but we need to take that away from them. So North are one of those teams that will go through the middle if it's open. They are, probably recklessly attacking at times, and that's why they get big scores kicked against them, because they're willing to take the game on, and they're not really great at being able to control momentum and slow teams down when they get a run on. So that bodes really well for us, because we've had big run-ons in almost every single game we've played. Round 1 we did, round 2 we did, 3, 4, 5, 6 we did. We won all of them. Even round 7 we did. Round 8 against Melbourne we had a spell. And then 9 and 10, we obviously had the 3rd term against Geelong and the 4th term against Adelaide. So if we get on those runs for a couple of moments, for a couple of quarters even against North, the likelihood of them stopping that is going to be very, very low, which is good for us. So the fact that we can get a 15, 20-minute spell and put this game to bed is great, but I think most Saints fans, or if not all Saints fans, watching this preview would be thinking, no, we want to see 4 quarters, we want to see 20-plus goals kicked, and we want to win this game by over 10 goals. And that's the ideal scenario, is that there's no injuries, Max King kicks a bag, they've got no one that can play on him. I think Ben Mackay might come back in this week. I'm not entirely sure. But other than that, their backline's not the strongest. Their forward line, I think, is quite dangerous, and that's probably where they could kick a fair few goals. And obviously, Larkey is a very good young forward. And then Zerha played a pretty good game last week against Melbourne and kicked an amazing goal in the 2nd term. So he's going to be up and about. They've got a bit of speed in the midfield, but it's inexperienced, like I said. And we've got the seasoned bodies in there. Brad Crouch is in amazing form. Seb Ross is doing what he needs to do. Gresham through there. Sinclair through there. Zach Jones back and played a better game last week. And then you've got our 2 rucks. And, I think they've got Goldstein and Cherry, but, Ryder and Marshall probably better around the ground. But they're both pretty good as well. So we're going to give them some respect. But you'd back our rucks and our mids to kind of get the chocolates in the middle of the ground. And I think we can stretch them in the forward line. We've got King. Sharman potentially might be an out, depending on how the selectors saw his game last week, because he only had about the 8 disposals, but he did kick a critical goal. And that was the same against Geelong. Only about the 8 or 9 disposals, but kicked a critical goal in the game. So he knows when to find the sticks, and he stands up when we need him to. And this is a game where if you keep Sharman in, he might kick 4 or 5. You don't know. So it's a tough one for selectors, because we've got Bytel, Owens, Highmore, Leonard all ready to come back in. And Hunter Clark would have been another one, and Jack Higgins. So there would have been some serious headaches going into this week, choosing the best lineup. And then you've got players like Webster and Ben Long, who didn't have their best games last week. And do you change that, or do you just kind of stick with the flow that we've got? Because even though individual players might be a bit out of form, the collective is not out of form, so you kind of sacrifice the individual form of a player and go, well, Jimmy, you're not in the best form, but the backline as a whole is working, and you're part of that. You're a cog there that's really important, and whether you're playing well or not, when you're part of that 6 at the back, we play well. So I think, the teams will be announced later today. It's going to be very interesting to see what we do. But I'm backing someone like an Owens to get a gig and a Highmore to get a gig, and it might only be those 2. So I'm very interested to see what we do in that department. Now for some fun stats. I haven't done this in the previews, but I figured you guys would be interested. So we're 7 and 3. They're 1 and 9. Our percentage is 118. Theirs is 53. Our points for is 850. Theirs is 574. And points against 720. They've already conceded over 1,000 points in 10 weeks. So they're averaging over 100 points against, which is insane. We've played against top 8 teams 4 times. We've won 3 of them, which is great. They've played top 8 teams 6 times already, and they've lost all 6. Their average age is 23, ours is 24 and a half, so a bit more experience there. Our average player games is 42, theirs is 34. So both teams fairly inexperienced in the games played department. We're bigger in weight and we're taller. And overall, we have a lot more disposals per game, a lot more contested, a lot more uncontested, a lot more marks inside 50, more inside 50s overall, and we average over 4.5 goals per game, more than them. So all the stats kind of way in our favour, as you would have thought. We're 7-3 and they're 1-9. But this is a game where we really need to be ruthless, and we haven't been ruthless to a team for a long time. The Hawthorn game in round 4 or 5, whatever it was, that was really good because we just kept going in the second half, and it could have blown out to 100 points, but it didn't. But this is a sort of game where, if this was in 2004, 2005, we're going into this game in the top 4, and we're playing a bottom 2 team, and we've got, say, Fraser Gehrig in the forward line, Max King this year. We're not winning this game by any less than 50 points, if that makes sense. We're going into this and we're putting the foot to the floor and we're playing football and almost completely disregarding the opposition. We're just going to play our way because we know it's going to cause damage, and whatever the end result will be, it'll be, a pretty comfortable win. So I want us to have fun at the footy on Sunday, the fans and the players, but at the same time, our start needs to be critical, because if we give them a sniff in the first quarter and a half, that can change the whole complexion of the game. But if we come out, we play as a mature unit, we kick 5-1 in the first term, and then another 5 in the second. The game there is exactly where you want it to be as a Saints fan. So I think that's kind of the mentality we need to take into this. And no doubt Rats will be drilling it into the boys that this is a really big opportunity. We've got the bye afterwards, so I want the coaches to kind of drill into the players that play really well on Sunday, boys, because then we've got the week off. You can recover, you can go away for a weekend, you can see the family and friends, travel for a little bit, and then come back, and we've got Brisbane. So this game is as important as the Brisbane game in a fortnight time, in my eyes. Now, every game is important because we saw if we had a loss last week, we would have been 8th, potential to drop out of the 8th this weekend. Now a chance of actually finishing as high as 3rd. If Fremantle lose and Carlton lose, we'll go 3rd. And at the very least, if Melbourne do what they should do and beat Fremantle this week at the G, and we win against North, we go 4th at the bye, which is amazing. We'll be 8-3 in the top 4 at the halfway mark of the season, going into a very important stretch of games against top 8 opposition that's going to really decide where we finish at the end of the year. So this game's really important for us. It'll set us up, I think, really well, and it's a good confidence booster for players that might not be in the best form. Do you keep them in this week knowing that maybe they'll get a few, touches, get their hands on the ball, kick a few goals, and that might set them up for the rest of the year. So I'm excited, Saints. Hopefully I'll be there. I've been sick the last couple of days, but I'm pretty sure it's not COVID. I'll sort out all that stuff in the next couple of days, but today's been much better. Yesterday was a drag. But hopefully I'll be there on Sunday, get to see all you Saints again. Last week was awesome at Adelaide Oval, but there's nothing better than going back to Marvel at our home deck, surrounded by Saints, hopefully to see a Saints win. So I'll leave it there, Saints. Thank you very much for watching. Comment your thoughts on the game. What do you think we should do in terms of ins and outs and the mentality of the game? I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on that. And if you're watching and you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button and you'll be notified on all future videos. The podcast is out already. The vodcast is out on the channel. Saints TV Weekly is out, and all the videos from the weekend's game against Adelaide are out. So feel free to check those out as well. And I'll be back after the game on Sunday afternoon to review, hopefully, a nice win against North Melbourne. But until then, take care, Saints, and I'll see you after the game on Sunday. Go Saints!